Hey, how's it going, fight fans? Welcome to mindforcombat. If you're new to the platform, my name's Rohan, and this is episode 8 of my Ask Requested series, where you decide which video I make by simply commenting in the comment section below. I pick out a video suggestion at random, and every Monday I make a video based on your comments. So if you want a video to be made based on your comments, then just comment below. If you have a channel, I'll give your channel a shout out, and if you don't have a channel, then I'll pick out a random channel to give out a shout out to, and then you should probably check them out. See if you like their content. Anyways, for this video I'm going to be, the comment comes from my good friend, my boy from Taylor the Tape, who says, who are the most underrated, who, in my opinion of course, who are the most underrated champions in MMA history? Now this is a very interesting one, because MMA history is very vast and varied, and there's been tons of promotions and there's been loads of good stuff. But for me, to be honest, it comes down to 4 UFC champions, and I try to base it between active fighters, past fighters, guys that are maybe still fighting now but have been champion before. Just I try to get a mix of champions here of some of my most underappreciated fighters, in my opinion, that have won a UFC world title. And of course there's some outliers, even to some degree. You know, I feel like some of the guys that are widely regarded as being some of the best fighters of all time, to some degree, are underappreciated, and we're going to talk about that a bit. But it's a really interesting conversation topic, because in the world of fighting, a fighter can be absolutely exceptional and do everything he needs to do as a fighter, but he may still not be given the respect that he has, that he deserves or warrants, or even the credit he deserves, just based on public perception of how it goes. And I've recently had a debate with my good friend James Buchanan and on whether or not Joe Kawasaki is among the greatest of all time, and that to me is a perfect example of a guy who's done everything that you need to do, both in and outside of the ring, cage, whatever it may be, and didn't get the respect that they deserve. So this is a really interesting subject for me. It's one that took me a lot of thought, not because it was hard for me to think of the guys, it was hard for me to narrow it down more so. But anyways, I've come up with 4 guys, and this is who I'm going to go with. So at number 4, I've got Jose Aldo. Now you may be thinking, but Rohan, he's widely regarded as one of the best featherweights of all time, and whilst that's true, I believe among the casuals, the narrative of his career changed the moment he got knocked out by Conor McGregor. Now don't get me wrong, that was obviously a spectacular finish by Conor McGregor, and I'm not one of those people who thinks that Conor McGregor was always overhyped. I actually feel like the kid was talented. But we have to be honest that the narrative of Jose Aldo's career has changed after that loss, and that's really, really sad for me. Jose Aldo is a guy that's obviously always been the utmost gentleman outside of the ring. There's that video of him when he tries on his first suit after he won the WEC world title, and really melts your heart. And I'm a huge fan of Jose Aldo, and I feel like over the time he hasn't really gotten the credit that he deserved. Obviously his fighting style has changed, he's aged, things change, you know, you lose your explosiveness, you start fighting a little smarter, you have tons and tons of fights, so tons and tons of injuries, particularly a guy who's been around for as long as Jose Aldo has. And this is a guy who I believe that deserves a lot more credit than he gets, and I hope that history doesn't write itself a narrative on Jose Aldo's career that is based on his loss to Conor McGregor, or indeed his 2 losses to Max Holloway. Anyways, as it stands right now, Jose Aldo stands at 28 wins with 5 losses. He's actually signed a UFC 6-fight extension despite talking about wanting to leave, so that's interesting to me. So Jose Aldo is a former 2-time UFC world champion. He beat Frankie Edgar to reclaim the belt after he lost to Conor McGregor, and he came over from WEC and got promoted to UFC featherweight world champion from winning the WEC title. On that back, he's also a former WEC world champion. He was actually the youngest WEC world champion of all time. He had 7 defenses of his UFC belt, and he had 2 defenses of his WEC belt, so a total of 9 world title defenses in the division. So he was the man in the division for 9 consecutive title defenses. That's a very, very long time. Conor McGregor obviously came in and put a stop to his run, but before that he was incredibly dominant and has been championship caliber even after that loss. So Jose Aldo is my number 4 guy. At number 3, I got a guy who's still currently an active world champion. Is the current middleweight champion of the world, is Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, who is 20 wins and 4 losses, has won 9 fights in a row and is 8-0 as a middleweight. When you're looking at some of his middleweight victims, you're looking at Derek Brunson when he was knocking out everyone on a 5-fight win streak. Then he took out Jacare Souza by brutal KO when nobody wanted to fight Jacare Souza. And then he goes on to beat Yoel Romero not once but twice. Now, granted, I felt like he should have lost the second fight, but still fact remains he got the W, and he's the current middleweight champion. Now he's a guy that's very often overlooked, and I feel like maybe it's his humble personality or the fact that he doesn't talk too much shit. He's obviously been very inactive lately as well, which means a lot of attention has been taken away from him, but I feel like a lot of the attention that he deserves has been taken away from him, has been put on Israel Adesanya. That could come down to the fact that Israel Adesanya has been obviously active and fighting a lot, but I feel like the narrative that he's going to get absolutely smushed by Israel Adesanya is a bit out of place and not really representative of the truth. and I can't wait to see Bobby Knuckles back in the ring doing his thing, and he's my number 3. So at number 3 I got Robert Whittaker. At number 2, if you guys been watching this channel, you know I'm a huge fan of Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Some may accuse me of being a little bit of a fanboy of his, and I'll proudly be a fanboy of Demetrius Johnson. The guy's a good dude, good family man, just complete gentleman, and he's done some incredible stuff in the ring. When we want to talk about some of his in-ring performances, let's talk about before he even went down to flyweight. At bantamweight, he fought for the world title, beating guys like Miguel Torres, who at the time was a dominant world champion for a long period of time, wasn't that far removed from then. He went on to fight Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz being a lot bigger than him. I think he was 6 inches taller than him, a huge weight advantage, huge reach advantage, and he gave Dominic Cruz a whole heap of trouble. Dominic Cruz had to rely on his wrestling to beat him back in 2011. After that, he went on to win the flyweight tournament, defend the flyweight title 11 times. He beat there's a narrative that's sold on Demetrius Johnson that he never fought the best fighters. Well, that's not necessarily true. He beat Joseph Benavidez twice, not once but twice, and brutally knocked him out once. Joseph Benavidez has beaten Henry Cejudo and is on a 3-fight win streak to this day and is still relevant. He beat Henry Cejudo himself. Triple C has actually got finished in the first round by Demetrius Johnson at one time, and the second fight could have very easily have gone to Demetrius Johnson, so he could very well still have been an active world champion. He beat John Dodson not once but twice. John Dodson, who's knocked out TJ Dillashaw, beating guys like Pedro Munoz, has been around for a long time, is a very respected fighter in the top of both the flyweight and bantamweight division. That's another good win. And he beat Kyoji Horiguchi, one of my personal favourite fighters fighting outside of the UFC right now, who's on, I believe, a 10-fight win streak, no more, 13-fight win streak. He's the current Ryzen and Bellator bantamweight champion, and that's a weight division above from where Demetrius Johnson beat him, so that's how good Demetrius Johnson is. I believe, and just for some further information, he has a record of 29 wins, 3 losses and 1 draw, which sounds very much like a boxing record. That's how good Demetrius Johnson is. Demetrius Johnson's an excellent fighter, and I have him at number 2 as one of my most underappreciated champions of all time, and I believe that once he retires, the story won't really do him justice for how good he was. At number 1, I got a guy who's a legend of the sport, a pioneer of the sport, was around in the early days of the sport, and that's Frank Shamrock. Frank, the legend Shamrock himself, is my number 1 underappreciated fighter in history. And the issue with Frank Shamrock is, with mixed martial arts, where Dana is so powerful in it, UFC is so powerful in it, a lot of times if you fall out with them, they can help shape the narrative of how you're remembered in generations to come, and that kind of stings for fans like myself who are huge Frank Shamrock fans. Frank Shamrock, while he retired from mixed martial arts with a record of 23 wins, 10 losses and 2 draws, you got to remember he fought in the generation where guys had like 16 wins and 12 losses because they were always fighting high caliber fights. You want to think about some of his accomplishments. He was an interim king of Pancrase. He was the WEC light heavyweight world champion. He was a Strikeforce world middleweight champion. He was the UFC light heavyweight champion. He defended his belt 4 times in the UFC. Never ever actually lost his belt in the UFC. And he went 5-0 overall in the UFC, so he retired undefeated from the UFC. He beat the likes of Tito Ortiz, who went on to become a more dominant champion and have a legendary career in his own right. He beat Bas Rutten, who's a legend in his own right, a former UFC heavyweight champion. And these guys are much bigger than Frank Shamrock. He beat Jeremy Horn, who's absolutely exceptional, Enson Inoue, Kevin Jackson, the former Olympic gold medalist. Frank Shamrock is a guy who will never truly get the credit he deserves, and I really hope that some people start to really pay him some attention for everything he's done, achieved, and the way he shaped the sport. Truly an exceptional fighter, was a really good man, and for me, the number 1 fighter, most underappreciated by my number 1 most underappreciated mixed martial artist world champion is Frank the Legend Shamrock. So guys, if you ain't ready, go check out some Frank Shamrock fights. Super good guy, great guy, and I think a lot of him. Anyways, for this week's shout out, the channel shout out goes to Kairos MMA. Kairos MMA, he's a great dude. He's got a great channel, fucking hilarious. The dude cracks some jokes that actually make me, bring me to tears laughing. He's a really funny guy. He's got a great channel and does a lot of great MMA content, and he's definitely worth a check out. So I'll link him in my comment below, and definitely check him out. If you're new here, so like, subscribe. What's going to be my next video, guys? Why don't you guys tell me? I'm running out of ideas here, so I need you guys to comment. I've actually got a few comments in my last video, so I'm going to go through them. If I don't find something interesting in this video's comments, then I'll go back to my last ones, check them out, and maybe I'll do a video on that. Thank you for watching, guys. I'm Rohan. This is Mindforcombat. Thank you.